Welcome to It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of our city and some of the people that are very important to the making of that history and are continuing to do so at this time. We're so pleased today to bring you our history tape number 316. Now, this particular month of September, we are celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and we are very delighted today to have Mr. and Mrs. R.J. Garcia as our guest to interview today in a celebration as one of the first families, Hispanic-wise, in Grand Prairie, Texas. Mr. R.J. Garcia, welcome to the set.
Jackson, pleased to be here.
Yes, and Amita?
Pleased to be here.
I'm just so excited about the two of you being able to share your lives with us on this wonderful history tape. And with your permission, this will be played the latter part of September and even the first week in October, because that's the way our history schedules go. So with your permission, Amita, we're going to start with RJ, since he's the reigning person in the middle of the set here today. And RJ, we'd like for you to look out into your camera where our wonderful Amanda is working today, and tell us a little bit about the real R.J. Garcia in the beginnings. Would you do that?
Sure, I'd be glad to. First of all, it's a real honor and pleasure to be here with you, Miss Jackson.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for inviting us. But I was born June 17th, 1949 in Kingsville, Texas. Kingsville is a city of about 30,000 people, 40 miles south of Corpus Christi. My parents were Jose Raul Garcia and Nilda Lerma Garcia, and grew up in Kingsville, went to parochial school for the first 6 years of my education at St. Gertrude's Catholic Church in Kingsville. And well, I guess I better back up a minute. I was the oldest of 6 children.
All right.
Okay. So I had 2 brothers and 3 sisters.
All right, would you like to name drop?
Sure. I'll start with my brothers. Danny Garcia, who currently lives in Mathis, Texas. And then I have a younger brother named David Garcia, who lives in West Palm Beach, Florida. I have 3 sisters. The eldest is Barbara Garcia, who lives in Austin, Texas, along with my mother currently. Another sister, Belinda Garcia, who happens to live in Houston. And the baby of the family is Betsy Garcia, who's also in Austin, Texas. So we had a big family.
What did your dad do for a living, and did your mom work out of the home?
Sure. My dad grew up in a real small town in South Texas called Ben Bolt, Texas. It was really a farming community in Ben Bolt. His family, my grandparents had a 700-acre farm or ranch in South Texas, and that farm or ranch had been passed along for generations. So they probably had that land, and I'm just guessing, speculating. I don't really know, but I think they lived on that piece of land even when Mexico wasn't part of the United. I mean, when Texas wasn't part of the United States. Back when Texas was part of Mexico, probably. So, anyway, my father graduated from Ben Bolt High School and went into the Army in World War II and fought in the Philippines and lost, he was wounded in the Philippines and wound up losing a leg, so he had an artificial leg. And as far as what he did for a living, he was a contractor, had a couple of dump trucks, hauled dirt and sand around, and he also owned a liquor store in Ben Bolt, Texas. And that's how he provided for his family.
All right, now.
My mother was a housewife and raised 6 kids, and then she went back to school and got her degree. She got a bachelor's in education, and then she got a master's in education once the kids were grown.
All right. In Kingsville, Texas, growing up as a young man, did you help your dad with the dump trucks? Did you have to help do the chores or do anything like that? Or were you free and easy, being the first son?
I was pretty spoiled being the first son, but actually I remember having a newspaper route.
Okay.
And selling newspapers.
Oh, I see. All right. And going to school, even though it was a parochial school, they're the ones that are tough on you. Did you have any good friends at that place?
Had a lot of friends, but I can...
The sisters?
My memories are of the sisters.
Yes.
And very strict disciplinarians, and I remember getting a ruler on the back of my knuckle many, many times.
That was not against the law then, was it?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
That was part of your education.
Yes, and did you have any favorites when you were in those first 5 or 6 grades? That someone that was just real meaningful, that you even remember today?
Not. It's so far back. I'm sure all those nuns made a big impression on me as I was growing up, but none, no name really stands out. I made lots of friends when I was in school, and they're still friends to this day.
On to middle school and high school, what happened?
Well, I went to public school in the 7th grade, called Gillette Junior High at the time. And Amita, of course, was attending Gillette Junior High. But we grew up in the same neighborhood, so we had kind of known each other a little bit before then. Got through middle school and then went on to H.M. King High School in Kingsville and graduated in 1967 from H.M. King High School.
When you were a student in high school, did you have favorite subjects, favorite sports? How did you excel?
Well, I was pretty good academically, actually. I think I remember, I think I graduated maybe 7th out of a class of 300 and something.
That's pretty good.
I liked math and science, and so those were kind of my favorite courses.
Okay.
And I played some basketball in high school, and I was a manager of the football team.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to leave you at the Kingsville High School.
Sure.
The King High.
King High, brainless.
Yes, we need to get to Amita. And let's start out from the very beginning with you, and you have your camera, and you know what we need to know.
Okay, well, my maiden name is Cabrera, and my dad, well, I'm the 4th child of 5, and there were, I have 3 sisters, and a brother.
All right, would you like to name drop them?
And my oldest sister is Rosario, and she's still in Kingsville. My brother Rene is in Corpus. My older sister Nina, who is the one that I'm really the closest to, and is probably the one who had the most influence over my life in many ways, because she pulled lots of strings with my mother and got me in lots of trouble, and I did not like her until I was like 12. And then she was, which made her about 16 or 17 and much easier to take. And then I've got a younger sister her name is Olinda, and she's 5 years younger than I am. And I don't remember a lot about her. I remember my Nina, the one that's just right before me. She was my nemesis for a while there. But I love her dearly now, and we just get along real well. My mom was Emma. Cabra was her last name. And they came in from Laredo.
Your dad's name?
My dad's name was Cabrera, and they lived in Kingsville. They had a large farm or a ranch in Kingsville, and they'd had that for generations. And I really don't know any more about where they came from, because for as long as I can remember, they were there. Now, my mom, I know they came in from Laredo. Her family came in from Laredo. Her mom did. Her dad came in from Spain through Cuba and up through Laredo, picked up my grandmother, and they came up and settled in Kingsville. And that's basically what my background is.
How about schools?
Well, my grandmother, I was going to tell you this. Now, my grandmother and RJ's grandmother lived across the street from one another for many years before RJ's grandmother moved away. Of course, I remember my grandmother telling me, even before I even knew RJ's grandmother, or RJ for that matter, what a nice lady had moved away from their area, from their block. And it's funny to look back and think about these 2 ladies were just such fast friends, and then for RJ and I to end up getting married, and there wasn't any help in between. And I went to a regular a public school, Lamar Elementary, and I had a 2nd grade teacher that I remember her telling me, and to this day, "You must be Nina's little sister." And from then on, it was like I was always somebody's little sister.
Yes.
It was like, yeah, I never got past that, and that was, I always wanted to tell the teachers in my kids' classes not to say, "Oh, you must be so-and-so's little sister," because that was always so difficult for me. And I'm
Yes.
wondering about other kids that come in second like that, or actually in my case fourth. Then let me see, we went on to middle school, and that's where I met RJ in the 7th grade. And you know, I think I knew in the 7th grade. I had other things to do, I knew, and I did, but I knew in the 7th grade, and we really didn't date until we were about in high school in the 9th grade, before we actually started dating. But I remember having cousins that played with them. I did not really play with RJ because he was in another neighborhood, and we didn't mix, you know.
Yes.
There was a park in between, and my parents wouldn't let me go past that park. So that was why we didn't mix. But I didn't know him well until we got into junior high. And then we went on into high school. And, you know, I had a grand old time. I don't remember anything specific or anything. I just remember having a grand old time. And then I went away and did a little bit of nursing, went away to do some nursing, which was 30 miles away in Corpus Christi. And I did my thing there, and RJ did his thing in college. And we kind of separated for a while there and did our own thing. And then we came back together right about the time he was a senior in high school.
College.
In college, yeah. Meantime, I was working in a hospital doing my thing. And then we got married.
All right.
Yeah.
And we're going to stop there and get back to RJ. RJ, I left you at high school. I'd like for you to bring me up to date through your college years and maybe some of the things you studied, and who motivated you to decide what college to attend, and give us some specifics.
Sure, I'd like to do that. I don't think there was ever a whole lot of question in my mind that I was going to attend college. And I always assumed that I would attend college at Texas A&I University, which was in Kingsville at the time. I really didn't think my parents could afford to send me, you know, anywhere else. And even back then, it wasn't real easy to get scholarships and all that kind of stuff unless, you know, you were an athlete. I also had an uncle, Carlos Lerma, who had received a football scholarship to Texas Tech. And he was only about 10 years older than me, maybe 12 years older than me, right? Something like that. 12, 15 years older. But I really looked to him as a role model. He got a degree in civil engineering at Texas Tech, and he went on into the Air Force and retired from the Air Force as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. And I think through my Uncle Balo, I got interested in getting an engineering degree. So I went to Texas A&I University in 1967, majored in chemical engineering. And I received my degree at Texas A&I in 1971 with a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering. I also received a commission as an ROTC officer in the Army at that time. And upon graduating from college, I went to work for what was then known as Humble Oil and Refining Company, and now it's known as Exxon Company USA. Exxon had a big district office in Kingsville. They had maybe 40 petroleum engineers, 40 geologists, and they really worked all the King Ranch oil and gas properties in South Texas. So it was a huge operation with many engineers, many geologists, and I went to work for Exxon upon getting my degree.
Okay. Had you married by this time?
Actually, we married 2 weeks after I received my degree in college. Graduated.
All right. Who proposed?
Well, I proposed.
All right.
And
We both agreed.
I fixed it that way.
Oh, that is
I
wonderful.
proposed, yeah. We'd gotten engaged about 8 months prior, around Christmas.
Yes.
The preceding Christmas. And you know, it was pretty formal in those days. Not only I had to go to meet his parents, but my parents had to accompany me to go to meet his parents and ask for her hand.
Oh, how wonderful.
Well,
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of the way
Was that
things
kind
were
of
done.
starchy for you?
Yeah, pretty starchy, but that's kind of the way things were done then.
Yes, And you were braver than Dick Tracy and decided that she was worth all of that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I figured.
I don't think it dawned on us that we could have done it any other way.
Yes, because that was custom.
That was custom.
That was custom. Oh, I think that's wonderful. And then now you're with Humble Oil, and what are you doing while he's with Humble Oil?
Well, during the time that I graduated, right about the time that I graduated from high school, my mom became very ill, and so I went to Del Mar College and got my LVN degree, and then I worked. And I worked during the time that when we first got married. And pretty soon, about a year and a half later, our first comes in, Nikki.
All right,
Our
your
oldest-
first child.
Our
All
first
right.
child came.
All right, and that's Miss Nikki, and let's do her picture.
And this Miss Nikki. Miss Nikki graduated from South Grand Prairie.
If you'll hold that real still for Amanda, we'd like to get...
Is that going to work, Amanda?
Oh, Amanda's
Which way?
working on it. That's great.
Up? Okay.
And Nikki
All
was a
right.
1990 graduate of South Grand Prairie.
She's
High
a 1990.
94? 90?
School. I think it's 90.
Okay.
All right. She was a warrior anyhow from
She
South
was a
Grand
warrior.
Prairie. All righty, and so Nikki came along, and she was a blessing. Isn't she a beautiful young lady? Tell us a little bit about Nikki.
Well, Nikki was born in Kingsville.
All right.
RJ was such a good dad. I would get home from work, and I would work the 3 to 11 shift, and I'd get home from work, and there he'd be, just a rocking her and patting on her, and the kid was in heaven. And it dawned on me right about that time that I was really missing out, and it just wasn't worth paying all that money to Uncle Sam for me to be at work.
Yes.
So I quit, and I stayed home with Nikki, and then about that time, RJ had a job change.
All
Is that
right. Tell us about your job change. Where'd you go after Humble?
Left Exxon Company USA in Kingsville. I went to work for an oil and gas subsidiary of Alcoa Aluminum in Point Comfort, Texas. And we moved to Port Lavaca, Texas. And again, I was doing pretty much the same kind of work that I was doing for Exxon, except for a much smaller company, a subsidiary of Alcoa called Newman Production Company, and basically doing petroleum engineering for oil and gas reserves that Alcoa discovered on their fee property back in the late 40s.
And after
And
that?
we lived there for 5 years.
5 years, and then what happened to RJ and Miss Amita?
Well, in 1979, we moved to Grand Prairie, Texas.
What on earth brought you to Grand Prairie, Texas? Who's going to tell that story? That must be some story.
Should
Well,
I?
it's a very interesting story, and it's really your story, RJ.
Okay, well, what prompted me to move, actually, and we had an aunt and uncle that lived in Grand Prairie, Frank and Lucila Longoria. They lived on North Town Drive, and they were next door neighbors of Alan and Susan Brown. And of course, they were just mowing the yard one day, and they got together over the back fence and started talking. And Alan, of course, was working for First National Bank in Dallas at the time as a loan officer. He was a vice president in the oil and gas group for First National Bank in Dallas. And he was telling my Uncle Frank that they were in need of a petroleum engineer at the bank. And my uncle said, well, you know, I just happen to know somebody.
Just happened to have one in the family.
And I got a phone call from Frank at home, and he mentioned the conversation to him. And I was really interested in doing that because in the process of working for Alcoa, Morgan Guaranteed Trust Company was their bank, and I'd spent some time in New York with the bank engineers of Morgan going through our oil and gas properties. And, you know, I said, you know, this is something I might want to do someday. So when Frank called, I said, hey, that sounds terrific. I think, you know, I'll send you a resume. So I sent Frank a resume. Frank gave the resume to Alan Brown, and next thing I know, they asked me down for an interview, and I was hired.
And moving to Grand Prairie, was that a difference than Port Lavaca or Point Comfort area?
Yeah,
Point Comfort in Port Lavaca was about a town of 10,000. Is that right, RJ?
10 to 13.
So
yeah.
coming from first 30,000, then 10,000 to the Metroplex,
Yeah.
I was scared. I was really frightened. I thought, oh my gosh, I'll never get around.
Did you have another baby by this time?
Kelly was born, yes, she was getting ready to turn 2 before we moved over here.
All right. We better talk about her.
Well, let's talk about
Yes,
Kelly.
let's talk about Miss Kelly. We talked about Nikki, and we've got to give Kelly equal time.
This is Kelly. She graduated from high school from South in
94.
94. She was born in 77, is that right? Okay.
Okay.
Both of these kids,
Where are they now?
Nikki is she's in New Orleans. She's a chemical engineer for Texaco and is having a great time, is loving it, is just exactly what she wanted in her career and is doing very, very well. She's doing just great.
She attended Rice University after graduating from South Grand Prairie High School and had a great time at Rice. And upon graduation from Rice, she accepted an offer from Texaco. And she's living in New Orleans, and we're planning a marriage for her next September.
Oh, that's great.
And she, it's a guy that she met during her freshman year at Rice. They had a calculus class together, and they became study friends and study mates, and that blossomed into an
engagement at least.
Engagement. And,
Would you like to name drop?
His name is Juan Perez. John Perez. I'm sorry.
Okay.
John Perez.
And
Kelly is she graduated from South Grand Prairie High School in '94, and she also attended Rice University for 2 years. She's currently at home with us, and she's attending University of Texas in Arlington and taking 16 hours there. So she's in her junior year. She's majoring in business and with a major in information systems.
oh, that's great. That's wonderful. All right, we have the kids all squared away fairly well. We have you at the First National Bank with Alan Brown. And then where'd you go?
Well, I spent 15 years of my life at First National Bank in Dallas in all its
Transitions?
All its transitions, going
Yes.
to InterFirst and First Republic, and then finally NCNB and Nations Bank. So I spent 15 years with that organization, and then 3.5 years ago I left Nations Bank and went to work for Texas Commerce Bank, and the parent of Texas Commerce Bank is Chase Manhattan Bank in New York. And so I'm in the Global Oil and Gas Group for Chase Manhattan Bank, and we lend money to oil and gas companies all over the world, and I help to evaluate their reserves and determine what they're worth.
And Amita, what are you doing all of this time? He's doing this Nations Bank bit for 15
While he's
years.
doing his thing, I'm doing mine. I would not change my life in any way. I've really enjoyed my life. I spent the most of the children's time, most of their growing up time, going to PTA meetings and baking cookies and going to fairs and taking them to wherever they needed to go. So I spent a lot of my time doing that. The other part of the time I spent going to school. I went to UTA as a hobby for about 7 years. And after the 7th year, I got a degree in nursing. I got my Bachelor of Science in Nursing. So my goal was at that time to get out of school before Nikki graduated from high school, which I did. I did. And that was great because I was able to do something for myself that I really enjoyed, and that was study. But yet I was able to do the things with Nikki and Kelly that were also important to me.
Very important.
And I think as a result, we do have a very close-knit family, and it's always fun to me and exciting to hear that Nikki and Kelly actually want to come home. They actually want to go to the movies with us. They want to go to dinner with us. And these girls are, what, 20 and 24, and they're still wanting to ride in the back seat of this van with us. To me, that just says a whole lot.
It says a whole lot. Do you have a church life?
We both belong to St. Michael's the Archangel.
Church.
Okay.
Catholic Church in South Grand Prairie.
Okay.
Matter of fact, we were kind of, there were several founding families of that church. It was a spinoff from Immaculate Conception in Grand Prairie that had been here for forever. And there was no Catholic church in South Grand Prairie, so we began as a mission going to Zavala Elementary and just having Mass in the cafeteria. And we were able to get the church built. I headed up the building committee.
You have a beautiful plant, beautiful plant.
I guess it's been almost 10 years ago, and I was chairman of the building committee that put the church up.
As they say, you did good.
Well,
that is a gorgeous, gorgeous
very, very
edifice.
rewarding.
All right. Serving on boards and commissions and school board and all of this. We're getting down to, we have 4 minutes left on this interview. Would you
Okay.
believe we've erased all of that wonderful time? And
Sure.
we haven't had to edit, and Amita thought we were going to have to edit, didn't she? All right, tell us a little bit about, you've been so wonderful, and she has been so wonderful holding up your hands, letting you serve on all of these things.
She has been. She's been terrific.
Of the service you've given, would you name some of the things you've done and how
Sure.
you've enjoyed it?
Well, the most rewarding, I think, of course, has been my service on the Grand Prairie Independent School District Board of Trustees. I served about 3 years on the board between 1991 and 1994, and it's probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. I served on the board during a very tumultuous time, and so in those 3 years, I felt like I had served maybe 9 years. It was not uncommon to have meetings until 3 or 4 in the morning, and frankly, I was ready to go on to another area of my life after those 3 years, but it actually was very rewarding. I really enjoyed serving, and you know, from that service, I can't tell people enough about what a great, wonderful bunch of administrators, teachers, students we have in this district. They're all terrific, and they all do a terrific job. That's been the most rewarding. I've also served on the Planning and Zoning Commission here in the city of Grand Prairie. I've served on the board of directors of the Grand Prairie Hispanic Chamber. I've served on the board of the DFW Medical Center. Served on the board of the Tejas Girl Scout Council. I used to serve on the board of Children's First here in Grand Prairie, and used to be on the board of the Suicide and Crisis Center in Dallas. That's about it.
He's taken all of his time away from you. You have been wonderful to allow him to give all of that service, Amita. I think that is wonderful, because someone had to be there with the girls while he was doing all this good stuff for the city, for the schools, and for all of the organizations.
Well, she's done quite a bit of it herself.
Well, he's a great guy. He really is.
What are you going to do with the rest of your life, Mr. Garcia?
Gosh, I don't know. You know,
Play golf.
Yeah, I really enjoy playing golf.
Boondoggle.
Really enjoy living in Grand Prairie. I'm looking forward to seeing the kids grow up, and hopefully some grandkids down the road that we can spoil.
What do you think about the city of Grand Prairie?
Oh gosh, I think it's a very exciting time in the city's history. I think there's nowhere to go but up. And I think it's a great place to raise a family. I think that's really what attracted us to this community. It turned out to be that way. It was a great place to raise our kids, and it's still got a small town feel, but yet it's it's ready to take on the big boys in the metroplex.
In the half minute that you have left, is there anything that you would say to a Hispanic family to encourage them to be good to their kids and to make a good life for them here in Grand Prairie, Texas?
You know, I think we're lucky in that, and I don't want to generalize, but most Hispanic families are very close and very loving. And I think that's something that just comes with the culture and the tradition. And I think also it's very common in Hispanic families for them to want nothing but the best for their family, nothing but the best for their children, and to encourage them to get a good education, encourage them to get a good job, and they all want their kids to have a better life than what they had.
That's the name of the game, and y'all are so sweet to share your lives with us this afternoon in this history tape number 316. I want to wish you Godspeed, both of you. It's been a delight interviewing both of you all. I want to thank you for the time.
Thanks for having us.
And for the extra effort that
Thank
you
you.
made to get here after work this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.